Tonight, I'd like to talk about something that brings all Americans together: politics. Obviously, political discourse in the United States is at one of its lowest points in history. Everything from algorithms on social media that tell us exactly what we want to hear, to a gridlock Congress that's more interested in fighting than in governing, to violent clashes in the streets between Americans who flat out can't see eye to eye. How do we get here? How do we get to the point where Americans can have meaningful dialogue about issues they disagree on and issues that really matter? And what's the solution? As a social studies teacher, I believe that our profession is among the most noble in the world. In addition to building incredible bonds with our students and colleagues, we also have a duty to model for students what being positive and productive members of society looks like. And one of the ways that is most important is for us to model for students what having honest and meaningful dialogue with others should look like. And those schools are the best places to analyze the political issues of today and how to discuss them. For too long, schools have been viewed as the problem. Whether from parents, administrators, politicians, or school boards, there's been a societal pressure put on teachers to avoid the most controversial, most political topics in our classrooms. Tried and true statements like, students are too young to understand this stuff, to, is this really school appropriate, to, a good teacher never shares their political beliefs, have hamstrung and sidelined educators as we try to guide students on their path toward being more politically knowledgeable and engaged. On a more macro level, this content is being avoided nationwide. Hardly any states require anything in the way of high school U.S. history or civics courses. And according to the American Federation of Teachers, only 9 states require such courses. So the very venues that we as citizens can learn about political issues and how to discuss them have largely been eliminated. So it should then be no surprise that Americans who for generations have been discouraged from discussing politics at school are so bad at it when stakes are at their highest in our legislative bodies and in our communities at large. It is this divide between where we are and where we ought to be that deep and meaningful connections can be made in the present and the future. So, tonight, let's discuss some solutions to help future generations of Americans more effectively communicate their perspective and create connections with one another. Before we discuss those solutions, I'd like to introduce you to the world's greatest test group on how to have controversial political dialogue. Middle school students. Though society views middle school students as a precocious bunch, primarily focused on Fortnite and TikTok and Instagram, they are some of America's greatest thinkers when it comes to having political dialogue, conducting research, and creating connections with their fellow citizens. So here's how we do it. Solution number 1, we have to teach everything. This may seem counterintuitive to remaining non-confrontational, but it's actually the best way to avoid conflict, to foster intellectual curiosity, and focus students on finding solutions to the political problems we face in America. While the prospect of teaching highly controversial political topics to middle schoolers seems terrifying, it is actually quite freeing and enjoyable. With our 8th grade students, we've studied hotly debated topics, including race and racism in America, policing and Black Lives Matter, abortion, euthanasia, healthcare policy, gun legislation, the January 6 riots, the war on drugs, and mass incarceration. Students were exposed to the many perspectives that exist on each issue. They studied a multitude of sources, and they compared and contrasted policies in America to other places in the world. This in-depth approach allowed students to consider multiple viewpoints, multiple sources of information, and gave them a chance to think about what their opinions might be on a given issue. Solution 2, we have to normalize discourse and disagreement. And now that we've done the foundational work of considering multiple perspectives and multiple sources, it's time for students to carve out what their stance on a given issue may be. We try to frame all issues with a prompt or a policy proposal and then have students develop their own ideas. Using a variety of graded assessments enhances student buy-in, and it shows them how much we value this content. Students have written policy briefs, they've composed speeches, and they've participated in town halls that both shows their understanding of these issues and gives them a chance to share their opinions as well. As an example, during these town halls, students who agreed with the speaker would snap their fingers, and students who disagreed would gently knock on their desks. These small nonverbal cues allowed students a respectful way to indicate their opinion without undermining or offending the speaker. Additionally, students completed reporters' notebooks, and they quoted things the speaker said, and during our reflection period would either ask probing questions or give the speaker praise. These norms allowed students a chance to voice their opinion and also respectfully challenge their classmates. Solution 3, teach empathy. This is perhaps the most important piece of the puzzle. In our rough and tumble political discourse, people first point out all the ways that someone they disagree with is wrong, and they denigrate and dismiss them in the process. Especially on social media, where we all spend so much of our time. There are entire followings that are built on people attacking each other, and it promulgates the idea that being right is more important than winning your cause, your policy, or your solution more support. And winning support for your ideas can only come with empathy and patience. On most of these political issues we face in America, 50% of folks stand on one side, and 50% are on the other. How can we move people on these issues and solve the political problems we face in America? This is part of what we ask our students to do. To not be frustrated when someone disagrees with them, but instead to show their classmates empathy and to try to be patient as they undertake the mission of getting them to look at issues from another lens or worldview. In all, classrooms are the single greatest resource we have at our disposal to improving political discourse in our country. By exposing students to everything, by affording them the time to study complex, controversial political issues in depth, and by normalizing empathy, patience, and disagreement, we can teach future generations how to effectively communicate their perspective and have political dialogue that can move our country forward. Thank you.